Hi, I'm Dan Alberghetti from danscourses.com, and I'm going to walk you through the CCNA Security Chapter 10 Lab B. What we're going to do is we're going to configure the Cisco ASA 5505 using ASDM, the Adaptive Security Device Manager. In Lab A, we got to configure the ASA device using the command line interface. This time, we're going to get to do it using a graphical user interface using a web browser to manage and configure the ASA device. So let's get started. As you can see from the diagram on my desktop, that this is the topology of the lab that we're going to use right now. Now, this diagram comes from Lab A, and in Lab B, the layout is the same. So as you can see, we've got 3 routers here. We've got an external network here, the 172.16.3 network. We've got an inside network, VLAN 1, right here, that's inside of our ASA device, and that's the 192.168.1 network. And then we're going to set up also a DMZ for a web server coming off the ASA, coming off one of our other switch ports, switch port Ethernet 2. So, but first off, let's make sure that our routers are configured correctly, and that's how the lab starts off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use TerraTerm Pro and get a console connection. I've got a console cable, and I'm consoled in to the routers. So what I'll do is I'll adjust my font size. Right, and if I hit enter, I should have a connection. I do, and I'm already in R1. So if we look at the lab, in part 1 of the lab, they want us to do some quick configurations to make sure that the routers are set up correctly. So I'm going to go to global configuration mode, and I'm going to do interface serial 0/0/0, and I'm going to set the clock rate. Right, and now that's set. I've also need to set up a default route. So I'm going to do a Control C, I'm going to Conf T, and IP route, a default route. Out of serial 0/0/0. All right, so there's my default route. So if we're R1, we want a default route going out of our serial interface going this way. Also, you can see we're the DCE on the serial interface, and that's why we put the clock rate on the serial 0/0/0 interface. All right, now that that's done, they want us to do a couple of other things. They want us to enable our web server, IP HTTP server. They want us to set the enable password, and it's already set actually, but I'm going to just do it again. Enable password to class. All right, and they also want us to configure line VTY 0 to 4, and the password is Cisco, and the login command, and then of course we do the same thing for line console 0. Password Cisco, and also the login. So those are the commands that will help set up our router 1. I'm going to do a copy run start to commit that to memory. All right, committing the startup configuration to NVRAM. We can take a look at our configuration and make sure it's good. And it is. All right, we have our serial interface set up. 10.1.1, you can see here interface serial 00 is already set up, and our fast Ethernet interface is already set up at 209.165.200.225 with a /29 subnet mask. All right, let's put in the rest of the configurations. I'm actually going to just telnet over to R3, telnet 10.2.2.1. I already have it set up. If you don't have telnet already set up, what you can do is just remove the console cable from the router and put it in the other console port and hit enter, and you'll be right into the other router through the console connection. So as you can see, I'm now in R3, and we're going to need to do similar commands on R3. The main thing, and this is outlined in the lab, is to set up your default route. And this time it's going to be out of serial 0/0/1. And as you can see, for R3, we want a default route going out of this interface right here, going this way. All right, so that's set up. And of course, you also have to have your line console 0, your line VTY set up, and that's about it for R3. So now what I'm going to do is do a Control-C, and let's telnet into R2. 2.2, and now we are in R2. Enable, password. All right, so now I'm in R2. And once again, if you want to just directly remove your console cable from R1 or R3 and then just put in the console port on R2 and you'll have your console connection. Now on R2, it's a little different. You're going to need a clock rate on serial 0/0/1. So we need to actually put the interface command in front of that. All right. And then our clock rate. Right? And now our default routes. Or not our default routes, but our static routes. So R2 needs to make sure that R2 has two connected interfaces. It knows about this network connected here, and it knows about this network that's connected on its interface here. But it needs two static routes to reach this network here, the 209.165.200.224 network. And it needs a static route reaching the 172.16.3 network over here. So this is a must. So what we'll do is we'll just put that in really quickly. We'll say IP route 172.16.3.0, and they want that to be a /24 subnet mask. All right, and oops, incomplete command. Out of which interface? Out of serial 0/0/1. So this interface right here. So we'll just do that. Right, done. And then for the other route, out of serial 0/0/0, it's going to be a 248 here on the end, and we need to put in the network. And the network is 209.165.200. Let's see here, 224. All right, and that looks pretty good. So we put in that static route as well, and we're all good. Control-C, show run. Make sure that you also have your IP addresses set up on your interfaces. Now that's part of setting up the topology. You can see here that I've got IP addresses on serial 0/0/0, and I've got my IP address set up on serial 0/0/1. So I'm all set. I've also got my line console 0 set up and my line VTY set up, password Cisco and the login command, line console 0, password Cisco and the login command. So we're all set. We'll do a quick copy run start, and now we're ready to configure our ASA device. Okay, so for configuring the ASA device, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the console cable from R1, and I'm going to put it directly into the ASA in the console port and hit enter, and you can see that I'm immediately into the ASA device. All right, I can do a show run and look at the running configuration if I want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, in the ASA device, we're going to erase the configuration and then redo it using the ASDM, the graphical user tool for managing the ASA device. But to start with, before we do that, they want us to look at a few commands in the ASA device. So hit Q and hit enter. So here's regular user mode. Just like in a router iOS or the iOS CLI, you can put enable to get to privileged mode. And now I'm in privileged user mode. I can do a show version command. And in the show version command, it gives us a lot of information about the ASA device. You can see right up here at the top that we're using the Adaptive Security Appliance Software 8.4 Revision 2 or version 2. And then the device manager, this is the ASDM. The device manager is 6.4 revision or version 5. And you can see here's the system image file in disk 0, which is in flash memory. You can see here the bin file. That's basically the operating system of the ASA device. You can see how much RAM we've got. Flash, 128 megabytes. BIOS flash. You can see all of the switch ports, and basically there's the switch port and the MAC addresses. And some more features. A lot of features here that are described. You can see that we're using the base license. This platform has a base license, serial number. A lot of information right off here off the show version command. They also want us to take a look at the show file system command. And in the file system, you can see that disk 0 is also a prefix for the flash memory, so you can put in flash or disk 0, right? And they show you the commands for doing that. So you could put in show flash, and you could also put in show disk 0. If you want to quit out of the middle of a command, just hit Q, and you're back to privileged user mode.